Hello and welcome to this small town. If you've been thinking of starting your own small town business, this is the video you want to watch because I'm going to share with you 3 business types that I've tried in a small town setting. Each one had different results for different reasons, but there is one common tie for all 3, and I'm going to share that with you right now, starting with the real estate business I started. Now, getting into a real estate business was not something I did out of actual choice. It's just that it's a small town setting and I needed to find a business to start right away. And real estate is relatable. Everybody knows what it is. So, however, this is the big thing. I am not a people person, right? I'm more of an introvert. So I want to focus more on the commercial side of real estate. So I want to be selling property to real estate investors, namely duplexes, triplexes. I want to sell, say, strip malls. That's what I want to get into. I felt that was more my thing. But here is the problem. At the time that I started it, real estate investors were only just starting to look outside of cities. Now, everything has changed since I started in real estate. Interest rates have gone up, and that is forcing a lot of investors to start looking rural. There's just one problem though. I was, according to my former broker, too ahead of my time when I started it. And to be honest, he's right. I wasn't getting half the amount of business I could, and I had to compensate by seeking business from the residential side, which I really didn't enjoy because, like I said, I'm introverted and therefore dealing with people who are very emotionally attached to their properties, my nature doesn't lend itself to that. I'm not sympathetic. I don't get attached to material myself. So therefore, I struggle to relate to people who get attached to material. And that's what a house is to me, right? I mean, yes, it's the most expensive thing you'll ever buy, but let me put it to you another way. If your house burnt down, would you be more upset if your house burnt down and that was the end of your home, or if your house burnt down and one of your family members happened to be inside and you lose them too? I think it's pretty obvious, right? So it's just a material possession. If you're in a scenario where you just lost your home, it's very traumatic at first, but you move on because everybody lives and you live to see another day, which means you live to see another house. So I couldn't deal with all that emotional attachment to property, but here's the problem too. There simply was not enough interest and demand from investors who are for the most part all situated in the city to come up here and invest. So by the time that those interest rates start to drive more interest up to rural communities like mine for the investors, it was too late. I had already lost interest and I had to move on to a different model altogether, a different model that is actually very location independent. So even though I live in a small town now, if I want to, I can help people in the city with the real estate needs. And I also do not have to engage in any relationships. I just help them get from point A to point B with very minimal interaction. And that's the way I like it. But it just goes to show my turn as a conventional realtor, you know, the type who shows people around and helps them fill out the paperwork, that is done. And it's done because I did not adhere to the model that I really was too ahead of my time. And you have to respect that about rural regions. And that's the whole point of this video. Despite the fact that we live in the internet age, despite the fact that now small towns have the same access to information and what have you, they will still move a lot more slowly than the city. Which brings us to business model number 2. This was actually specifically created to try and complement my real estate business. Those of you watching my videos know that I have a background in marketing. I'm a copywriter. So it only made sense to me to tap into one of the most powerful advertising mediums, and that would be publishing. I set out to create my own newsletter in my small town of Wyerton. What drove me to do that is I listened to the people of Wyerton. And what those people would tell me is, they despise the Wyerton Echo. The Wyerton Echo is the long-running town paper. They used to love it, but as industries consolidate, by the way, I apologize if you can hear meowing. My cat is at the door. I already fed her. She's never satisfied, so please ignore the meowing and please keep paying attention to what I'm telling you about this newsletter that I started to rival the Echo. There's an expression in real estate, ironically, that lends itself to this situation too. And that saying is, buyers are liars. And in this case, it was most certainly true. I had all these people complaining that the Wyerton Echo is now a shell of its former self since it was absorbed by a large conglomerate, which basically pays the Wyerton Echo lip service. Like, there is basically almost nothing about Wyerton in the Wyerton Echo. Logging on to their website is the equivalent of logging on to, say, CNN, because it might as well be that. It's all like globalized and nationalized news. There's just like nothing local left. So I thought, okay, this is a perfect opportunity for me to fill a need. People want more local news. And if I provide that to them, then it gives me a vehicle in which to advertise my services in real estate. So what ended up happening? Well, everything that I didn't expect would happen. First of all, it was easy getting the first like 150 subscribers, I would say. I think that was the number I had. Whenever people would respond, because it was an email newsletter, non-print, okay? I'm not gonna waste money on print, especially in this day and age. But when I would send an issue, there would always be the same type of things I'd get as a response when people would hit the reply button. First, people would quibble about the name. Now, Wyerton was amalgamated into a larger zone with a couple of other municipalities in the area. So legally, it's actually regarded as South Bruce Peninsula. And it just so happens that Wyerton is situated in the county of Bruce. So I called the newsletter the South Bruce Signal, and people would actually send me emails quibbling about the name. They were like, well, why didn't you call it the South Bruce Peninsula Signal? Well, first of all, that is a nightmare name. Say to yourself, the South Bruce Peninsula Signal. Quite the mouthful. Also makes for a troublesome URL. And so they couldn't wrap their minds around that. They were like, well, we think you're talking about South Bruce. So what you have to understand about this is like Bruce County is like a lengthwise, or it's a horizontally shaped county, right? I live in this part here. And then people who live in South Bruce consider that an actual entity, even though it doesn't have a formal name. Do you see? I know this can be a little confusing. So people are like, well, we think you're talking about the south of Bruce County instead of South Bruce Peninsula. So I would have all these people just complaining about that. Then they'd also send me emails if I had a typo, for instance, or it was always nitpicking responses. And if it wasn't nitpicking responses like those, it would just be people trying to butter me up looking for free advertising. So here I am going through all this work to create this newspaper. And I also, and this is where I was ahead of my time with the newsletter too, I was trying to integrate youth models into it. The Wyerton Echo, before it really started to teeter and go over into nationalized and internationalized news, it was geared towards boomers. I tried to strike more of a balance between boomers and younger generations, even though younger generations make up quite the minority in my region. That was too ahead of the time. I should have just kept on focusing exclusively on boomers, and maybe if younger generations eventually gravitate to the newsletter, then start working in some material for those people too. So in the instances of real estate and a newsletter, I did not follow the flow. And that is the key takeaway for starting a business in a small town. You have to follow the flow. People come up from the city and they think, oh, I've got all these great big city ideas and I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. And people are going to be amazed by my genius and it's just going to take right off. That's what you think. What works in a city really doesn't necessarily work here at all. Quite the opposite sometimes. Which brings us to business number 3, which is our little restaurant. When I was younger, I used to dream of having urban restaurants where I do all sorts of great things, stunt food, just really imaginative stuff. Have lots of fun with it, create new dishes, really wow people with the concoctions I could create. That does not lend itself to small town eateries. It really doesn't. What we have seen recently are strides by local small town populations in embracing, say, international cuisine, but that still falls within a certain convention. Butter chicken is one of our best-selling frozen meal dishes, and that is something that is more recent. Had we started our business, I don't know, 25 years ago and offered butter chicken as a freezer meal, 0 sales. I can almost set my watch to that. I can guarantee it that we would be selling nothing. But that is about as far as we push it, right? Because with international cuisine, there's still some sort of relatability. Now, if I tried to do half of what you see that's trending on TikTok, it would fail, right? It just would not jive. I will share with you 2 specials that we run that are best sellers in a small town. They're not imaginative by any stretch. They're very old school, but they work. Why? Because we have gone with the flow of the small town desire. Special number 1 that we run fairly often, and it's a bestseller. I'm not gonna believe this, but it's a combo. Our grilled cheese, which is on the regular menu, and we serve it with tomato soup. When winter started and we first started offering that as a special from time to time, gangbusters. Like, people are practically beating the door down from that. But like I said, there is nothing imaginative about it. It's a classic, and we're definitely never going to get any Michelin stars for doing it, but that's not the point. But in this case, we're giving the population exactly what they want. And it just so happens too that quite a few younger people come in for that too. There are plenty of younger people who have great relationships with their grandparents who clearly have been feeding them this type of meal when they're growing up. So it's got a great nostalgic feel even for the younger generation. And another special we run from time to time, and you guys are just probably gonna have a bit of a mental meltdown about how simple this is, but it's one of our best sellers. It's a sandwich that is not featured on a regular sandwich menu, and yet when we run it, we always sell out. Egg salad sandwich. I'm not kidding. I don't feel confident to add it on the menu regularly, but when we run that as a special, we clear out each time. And unfortunately, we have to turn some of our customers away when they come in because it just goes that fast. But it's with the restaurant that I finally learned the lesson. Don't try and reinvent the wheel. Do not try to impress people. If you want to try and impress people, do it with the quality of your food, not with the creativity of what you do. In living in a first world small town, you have to understand that people do, in fact, in a lot of cases, get to have their cake and eat it too. It's just the way capitalist society has worked out, and people get to enjoy a standard of living that puts them in a position where they want to have what they're familiar with, and they want to stick to what they're familiar with. And if you don't give them that, they will walk away. There is one restaurant in my town that does something very different, and as a result, they are now finding themselves having to sell up. Same thing with another restaurant on the same street. When they tried to deviate from a very standard Western menu, things blew up in their face, and it really didn't take long until they yanked all those new items. People are just finicky like that. But do not, I'll say it one more time, if you're starting a business in a small town, do not try to reinvent the wheel. In fact, you have ChatGPT at your disposal. Use it to research what is working in other small towns of a similar size to yours. Do that research, see what works, and more often than not, I guarantee you, ChatGPT will be digging up businesses doing very conventional things, and at most, with a slight twist. I told you that one of our best-selling combos is the grilled cheese and tomato soup. I don't know, maybe someone might think of elevating their tomato soup and adding, dumplings to it, and somehow that works. It's just an example. I personally would not put dumplings in tomato soup. But if you're gonna do something, take a classic and elevate it at most, but do not stray too far from the norm. Despite the fact that we live in an internet age, people in small towns are just not ready to have their boat rocked quite yet. Who knows? Once boomers are gone, it's definitely going to be a different game. But until then, stick with convention. I've also started a free group for small town entrepreneurs, and we talk about these things all the time. You can find a link to that free community in the description of this video. I hope what I've discussed today has helped give you ideas, and thank you very much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.